We are an island positioned at the meeting point of three continents. The mythical birthplace of Aphrodite, the love goddess emerging from sea foam along its western coastline. The final partitioned island within the European Union, separated by a line drawn in green pencil during 1963. This place is Cyprus. A limestone plateau flanked by two mountain chains. It lies at the Mediterranean's eastern edge. 50 miles from Syria, 44 miles from Turkey. It sits nearer to the Middle East than to continental Europe. By area, the Mediterranean's third largest island, extending 140 miles west to east. At its broadest point, it reaches 60 miles across. Sea caves open along its southern cliffs. Salt lakes fill each winter, attracting tens of thousands of flamingos arriving from the north. Mountain villages nestle into the slopes of a range that hosts the island's only ski runs. Gothic cathedrals converted to mosques stand beside Byzantine frescoes more than 900 years old. Venetian engineers, Ottoman governors, British colonial officials, Crusader kings. Each left a physical imprint on the island that remains readable today. Cyprus carries every stratum of its history simultaneously. Cape Greco marks the southeastern tip of Cyprus, the easternmost point of both the Republic and the entire European Union. Its limestone cliffs drop 30 feet into the Mediterranean. The headland protects 951 acres of designated national forest, recognized since 1993. Below the plateau, the sea has been cutting into that limestone for millions of years. It hollowed chambers, punched through narrow gaps to form arches, and carved tunnels now extending up to 262 feet back into solid rock. The natural arch called Kameratu Karika, known in Greek as Crow's Arch, stands 49 feet above the water. It is a freestanding limestone bridge shaped by the same process still working on the cliffs around it. Ancient geographers knew this headland as Cape Pedalion. Strabo, writing in the 1st century, recorded the hill above the cape as sacred to Aphrodite. A shrine likely stood here long before the Roman period. Below the surface, the palace caves and smugglers' caves sit in positions reachable only by boat. Eastward, salt water turns turquoise where the white limestone seabed reflects light back upward. It is the kind of color you would not expect from a cave. Loggerhead sea turtles select the shallows near the caves for nesting and feeding during the warmer months. Mediterranean monk seals take shelter inside the deeper chambers, one of the few remaining populations in the eastern Mediterranean. During spring and autumn migration, raptors use the thermal columns rising from the heated limestone plateau as a staging point before crossing open water. Fishermen working the waters around the cape favor two catches. Grilled octopus finished over high heat with lemon and olive oil. Red mullet small enough to fry whole, the skin crisping in seconds over a hot pan. For 3,000 years, the southwestern corner of Cyprus served as the island's main contact point with the wider Mediterranean world. Mycenaean settlers came first, followed by Tyrian governors, Roman administrators, and medieval pilgrims. This is the Paphos district. At Petra II Romeo, enormous sea stacks rise from the water close to a pebble shore. White surf breaks against dark rock while dry hills press in from behind. Local tradition placed the birth of Aphrodite at this exact spot, and the site drew worshippers for generations before Greek mythology formalized the story. A few miles north, Kato Paphos Archaeological Park occupies the ground where the Roman city of Nea Paphos stood. The administration here ran the entire island from the 1st century BC onward. Mosaic floors remain embedded in excavated Roman villas, assembled from thousands of small colored stones cut to precise dimensions. The patterns include geometric borders, hunting scenes, and mythological figures laid by craftsmen working from pattern books circulated across the Roman Mediterranean. Northwest of the harbor, the tombs of the kings were cut directly into the coastal bedrock. Work continued from the 4th century BC through the 3rd century AD. Despite their name, the tombs served high-ranking officials and prosperous families, not royalty. Doric columns support the burial chambers at the base of open-air courtyards reached by carved staircases. Several miles inland, Kuklia village grew up around the sanctuary of Aphrodite, the most important center of Aphrodite worship in the ancient world. The sanctuary operated continuously for over 1,000 years. A medieval manor built beside the ruins now serves as the local archaeological museum. Its thick walls enclose material from a site that never fully stopped being used. Strung between pine-covered ridges and the open sea, the Kyrenia Range defines the character of North Cyprus as fully as any geographic feature here. The range runs east to west above the northern shore, its slopes dropping steeply toward the sea. In spring, orchids and wild cyclamen appear across the exposed limestone above the treeline. St. Hilarion Castle occupies a ridge on the old route between Kyrenia and Nicosia. Byzantine engineers chose the site because the mountain itself served as the primary defensive structure. The castle never fell to direct assault. Below, walk the quays of Kyrenia harbor and you walk ground that has been in continuous use since antiquity. Kyrenia Castle anchors the eastern end, its walls built to absorb cannon fire rather than resist it. Inside Kyrenia Castle, the Shipwreck Museum houses the remains of a Greek merchant vessel that sank around 294 BC. The ship was discovered in 1965 by Andreas Kariolou at 30 feet of depth, roughly a mile offshore. Michael Katsev of the University of Pennsylvania excavated the wreck between 1967 and 1969. It held 381 amphoras of wine and olive oil. It also held over 9,000 almonds and millstones quarried on the island of Kos. Carbon analysis of the almonds dated them to 288 BC. The ship itself was over 80 years old when it sank, making it among the oldest merchant vessels ever recovered from the sea. No other merchant vessel of equivalent age has been recovered intact from the Mediterranean. The only capital city in the world that remains divided between two governments. Nicosia sits at the center of Cyprus, 40 miles from either coast. Its street plan carries the island's political history more directly than any monument could. The Venetian walls encircling the old city were built between 1567 and 1570. Designed by Italian military engineers Giulio Savorgnan and Francesco Barbaro, they form a near-perfect circle 3 miles in circumference. 11 pentagonal bastions reinforced the perimeter with a ditch 262 feet wide cut around it. The city fell to Ottoman forces on September 9, 1570. While the walls were still not fully finished, they remained standing. Inside those walls, Büyük Han went up in 1572. Built as a caravanserai for merchants traveling with animals and goods. 2 levels of arched colonnades surround a square courtyard with a small prayer space and fountain at the center. A short distance away, Selimiye Mosque occupies the shell of the 14th century Cathedral of St. Sophia, the largest surviving historic building in Nicosia. Lusignan kings were crowned here. Gothic vaults and lancet windows remain visible above the Ottoman modifications. Walk Ledra Street and you cross the city on foot, connecting south to north across a boundary that was sealed for decades. It was closed for decades by a military barrier. It reopened for pedestrians in 2008. At a certain point along the street, the atmosphere changes. The green line appears, the ceasefire boundary drawn on a military map in 1963, extended across the whole of Cyprus after 1974. Near Samaya Square, the whirling dervishes perform the Sema ceremony of the Mevlevi Sufi order. The practice connects to the poet Jalaluddin Rumi, who established the order in Konya in the 13th century. The mountains at the center of Cyprus should not exist. Troodos is a section of ancient oceanic crust pushed above the surface by tectonic forces and exposed by millions of years of erosion. It covers 1/3 of the island's total land area. The massif is igneous in origin, a plug of oceanic crust that pushed upward from the ancient seabed. Erosion exposed it gradually over millions of years. Outcrops of petrified pillow lava are visible in road cuts and hiking trails across the upper slopes. They formed when molten rock met cold seawater on the ocean floor. This geology made the mountains unusually rich in copper. Mining here supplied the Mediterranean world for centuries. The ancient Greek word for copper, kypros, is widely considered the root of the island's name. Snow covers the upper elevations from December through March. 4 ski slopes operate on the north face of Olympus during that window, the only skiing you will find in Cyprus in summer. Calabrian pine and golden oak hold the slopes in dense forest. The trail network includes the 14 km Adelante circuit around the peak. The 3-mile Caledonia Falls path drops through a series of waterfalls to the valley below. 9 Byzantine churches in the Troodos Range carry UNESCO World Heritage designation. Their interiors hold frescoes painted directly onto wet plaster using mineral pigments, each section completed before the plaster dried. The rivers Pedieos and Ielias begin here, feeding reservoirs and agricultural land across the central plain. The Chorus and Karanitis rivers also originate in the Troodos watershed, supplying the southern districts. Together these rivers make the mountains the hydrological center of Cyprus. The Troodos National Forest Park protects 22,670 acres around the summit. Foxes, hares, and endemic butterfly species move through the forest above the treeline. Bonelli's eagle and the Cyprus warbler work the exposed ridges. Caicos, a monastery at 4,000 feet on the western flank of the Troodos Range, founded in the 11th century with imperial support from Constantinople. An icon of the Virgin Mary inside it has not been directly viewed since the day it arrived. The founding story centers on a Byzantine governor named Manuel Vutumites who encountered a hermit called Isaiah while lost in the Troodos forest. Through illness, healing, and an appeal to Emperor Alexios I Komnenos, the hermit secured what he wanted, an icon held in the imperial palace at Constantinople. A painting of the Virgin Mary attributed to Saint Luke the Apostle was sent to Cyprus. Luke, according to tradition, painted the icon with Mary herself as his model. The image arrived in Cyprus around 1092 and has remained at Caicos since. The icon of the Panagia Eliousa, the All-Merciful, has never been directly viewed since it was placed in its current shrine. It is covered in a silver gilt casing set into a frame of tortoiseshell and mother of pearl. 3 icons in the Orthodox world are attributed to Saint Luke. This is one of them. The iconographic style established by this image spread across the Byzantine Orthodox world. The Russian Orthodox Church formally adopted it in the 17th century. That reach, from Byzantine icon to Russian cathedral, is one measure of what Caicos holds. Archbishop Makarios III entered the monastery as a young monk and novice. He later became Cyprus's first president after independence in 1960. His tomb stands on a hilltop called Throni, a short distance from the monastery walls, looking out over the forest. The monastery has burned and been rebuilt several times across 900 years of history. Each reconstruction added to the complex without erasing what the fire left behind. Pilgrims arrive throughout the year. The 2 main feast days, August 15th and September 8th, draw the largest gatherings. In the Troodos wine region, inside Limassol district, sits the village of Omodos. Its tradition of winemaking runs through the Monastery of the Holy Cross and the vine-covered terraces rising above. The old wine presses called linos still stand in several courtyards. These are stone troughs where grapes were crushed by hand and foot. The grape must ran through channels cut into the rock and collected below. Rock chambers throughout the village maintain consistent cool temperatures for aging, a function the rock performs without refrigeration. Winemaking here predates the monastery by many generations. The tradition passed through generations of monastery cellars and family-owned presses, with each household managing its own portion of the surrounding terrace vineyards. Today, guided cellar tours let you follow the process from vine to barrel, tasting local varieties in the same vaulted rooms where fermentation occurs. Bookings for peak months fill quickly. The village square is the social center. Tavernas face outward, stone benches line the perimeter, and the monastery door stands open to residents and day visitors alike. In harvest season, the square fills with baskets of grapes carried down from the terraces above. The wine produced in these hills has always tied religious observance to commercial trade. It moved from monastery cellar to market and back through a cycle the village has not entirely abandoned. Winemakers here are entering international competitions. Several have won medals in the last decade. The principal varieties on the surrounding terraces are Zinisteri, a white grape adapted to dry limestone soils, and Maratheftico. Mavro is the dark variety used in both table wine and Commandaria production. Zinisteri carries high acidity and a mineral quality that reflects the chalky soils of the Troodos foothills. The altitude keeps temperatures lower through the growing season, preserving acidity that would otherwise disappear in coastal heat. What does Leonardo da Vinci have to do with a village in the Troodos foothills? In 1481, he reportedly purchased lace here, intending it for an altar cloth at Milan Cathedral. The village is Lefkara, and its lace work has been woven without interruption since at least the 14th century. Lefkara takes its name from the pale limestone hills that ring it, a village in the Larnaca region on the southeastern Troodos slopes. The tradition divides Lefkara into two settlements, Pano Lefkara and Kato Lefkara. The lace work called Lefkaritika developed from local embroidery shaped over generations by Byzantine geometric patterns and Venetian artistic conventions brought through trade. Women worked in courtyards and on the narrow streets, the process visible rather than hidden, passing between generations by observation and instruction. Each piece begins with linen marked by hand. Threads are counted, pulled from the weave, and cut with precision. The open spaces left by removed threads are then filled using hemstitch and needlepoint in patterns that can take weeks to complete. A single error in the thread count changes the geometry of the entire piece. There is no correction after the thread is pulled. Alongside the lace, Lefkara produces silver filigree work, fine wire twisted into open geometric patterns, then formed into earrings, pendants, and crosses. The technique requires consistent heat and controlled pressure. Too much of either collapses the structure. The silversmiths work at benches in small shops facing the same cobbled lanes the lace workers use. The two traditions occupy the same village without competing for the same buyers. Both crafts link the village to long-distance traders across many eras. Both now anchor the village's identity in a landscape where tourism has grown without displacing the practice. Kakapetria has been occupied in the Solea Valley since the 6th and 7th centuries. Built on gently sloping ground between the Chorus and Gorillas rivers at an elevation where the mountain air stays cool through summer. Stone walls retain heat in winter and stay cool in summer. Timber balconies project over the narrow lanes below, cutting shade across the pavement. Many of the traditional houses were restored through coordinated effort by local residents and the government. The church of Agios Nikolaos tis Stegis, Street. Nicholas of the Roof, stands near the village in the forest above the Solea Valley. It began as a Byzantine monastery church in the 11th century. The pitched timber roof over the original stone structure was built to shed snow and mountain rain before water could penetrate the masonry. That roof is why the interior survived. Inside, artists working in the Byzantine fresco tradition applied mineral pigments to wet plaster, completing each section before the surface dried. The paintings cover ceiling and walls with figures of Christ, saints, prophets, and biblical scenes. They follow the formal conventions of Byzantine art: large eyes, frontal poses, gold grounds. The images date from the 11th through the 16th centuries, multiple layers of work accumulated over 500 years. The oldest frescoes from the 11th and 12th centuries follow the severe hieratic style of Middle Byzantine practice. Later additions from the 14th and 15th centuries reflect the Palaiologan artistic revival, with greater naturalism in the rendering of faces and drapery. The UNESCO World Heritage designation awarded to the Troodos painted churches as a group in 1985 covers this site. Each September, the village square fills for the Spoon Sweets Festival. Preserved fruits made from citrus, walnuts, and grapes fill the jars on display. Families offer them for tasting and sell them using recipes that predate anyone you could ask about their origin. Cyprus sits where European coastlines, Middle Eastern trade routes, and the religious geography of three world faiths converge. 140 miles long, divided, contested, and continuously inhabited for over 10,000 years. What Cyprus holds is not a unified story, but a layered one. Crusader weddings in harbor castles. Byzantine frescoes behind timber roofs built to outlast the winter. Ottoman caravanserais repurposed as craft markets. A ghost district sealed behind wire for 50 years. An icon that has not been directly seen since the 11th century. Donkeys on a peninsula road, an artifact of a conflict that is not technically over. Between a Venetian wall and a Neolithic settlement. Between a Gothic vault and a minaret added above it. Between a resort frozen in 1974 and a functioning port city in Cyprus. These distances are not large. The compression is the point. Stone upon stone. Centuries of accumulated decisions, most of them irreversible.